This is the Be One Change One podcast, where our mission is to help listeners define values, practice integrity, and inspire change.
Our vision is to mentor men and empower them to achieve more by taking responsibility for shaping their own lives.
He's Cass, an evolving man who has been shaped by adversity and continues to grow through his imperfections.
And he's Roscoe, an imperfect work in progress that tries to suck less every day.
Between us, we have over 40 years of Air Force fighter pilot experience with countless hours as trainers, instructors, and mentors.
Join us and learn to take responsibility for your own life as we dive into subjects from leadership to resilience to vulnerability.
Be the one who changes their course. Be decisive, driven, and purposeful. Set the example for others. Lead. We wish we'd had this show when we were younger men.
Be the one.
It's just your straight up and down, where Jana and I are more, left to right. It's not a big deal. Well, gosh, if the listeners had any idea the trauma behind the scenes, because Cass and I are like the opposite of tech people. Yeah. I am a smash big rocks into little rocks kind of guy, and Cass is a nerd, but not in that way.
Not that way.
Gosh, this is like that scene in Zoolander where they go, "Oh, the files are in the computer." That's the way I feel trying to produce this damn podcast, man.
Yeah.
So, Jana, here's what I need from you. Before I introduce you, I need you to hook us up with a good sponsor so that we can pay for somebody to produce and market this damn show, because we suck at this. I'm good at talking, but I'm not good at this stuff.
Yeah, got it. Okay, I'll add it to my list of things to do.
Yeah. So when you're all in all those meetings with those highfalutin people, have one of them call me.
Got it.
Yeah. All right. Well, after much gnashing of teeth, we seem to have at least got it to a workable solution. It's not perfect, but it'll work. So for the listeners, what a treat we have this evening. We interviewed Jana Toner last fall, a week or two, I guess, before the election. And that's important to know. And we're going to get into that. That's important. That was an important landmark and an important time back then when we interviewed her the first time. But Jana's got a really unique story that we wanted to get back out. So we worked really hard to get her scheduled again. And I'll give you the kind of the one-liner here is Jana went to school with my wife out in California. They went to high school together. And then somehow she ended up in the White House, not once, but twice, under two different administrations. So all the good stuff that happened in between there is what we really want to talk about. So politics aside, let's just talk about the story for what it is. And welcome back, one of our few returning guests, Jana. Thanks for coming back. Appreciate it.
Am I one of the few or the first? So,
well, you're the first returner that didn't have a first episode. So
I'll take it. I'll take it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
I love the story because the fact that you never know what the future holds, and who you go to high school with and who your friends are, like where that will lead you in the future. So love being here with the both of you today, and love the fact that it all came from Katie, because we went to high school together, and we were friends and liked each other, and the fact that like it leads to this, right? It's like exactly. That's why I liked her then. That's why I like her now, right? Like you always know, good people when you meet them, and those are the people you want to keep through your life.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
and we're living in such a unique time here where you can keep in touch with friends that you knew 30 years ago with the social medias and the technology that we have, and to be able to jump on Zoom calls and FaceTime and text messaging and Facebook and all the different connectivity avenues that we have now gives us that opportunity to maintain some of those relationships. And I applaud my wife all the time for having girlfriends that she's known for 30, 40 years in some cases. I don't have friends that go back that far, maybe one or two, but we don't keep in touch like this. So that in and of itself is an accomplishment.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it goes back to like, be a good person, right? Treat others like you want to be treated yourself. And it doesn't always come back and reward you, but it does a lot of the time.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm playing around with the chat here, but I bet you, Cass, you can't see the chat because you're on your phone, right?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Well, can I see the chat? No.
I don't know. Our listeners love this shit.
I'm lucky I can see me.
I can't read the chat if I can see it. So
I'm not sending it in the chat. All right, we'll adapt and overcome. So let's go back. I don't want to necessarily recreate the last conversation, but there are some good stories. You told some really good stories in there. So get us. You met your husband in college and UT. Is that right?
yeah, so yes, I went to school.
Okay.
I went to school at University of Texas at Austin.
Yeah.
I studied communications. I ran track and cross country. I was working in Houston at the time, and then was introduced to my husband, who was working on the Bush campaign and the Bush 2000 campaign. Back in Austin, and as all love stories go, right? Love at first sight, a connection, and fast forward, we will have been married 23 years next month. Can you believe it?
Cool.
Yeah, and yeah, it's one of those things where we just were introduced and had a lot in common. And he's still my best friend, still someone I want to talk to all the time, and tell my stories to, and tell my problems to, and annoys me like anybody, the most.
Well, shit, we could spend an entire episode talking
Just
about
on
that. I mean,
yeah.
Well,
So
but that's important though, because with some of our audience is maybe a younger demographic, and maybe some of those are out there trying to find their life mate, or somebody to spend those Saturday evenings with, and oh hell, even a Tuesday evening, sitting around just wearing your socks and watching TV. And you hit on something there really good, and it's like you guys are friends. And I think that especially nowadays, that often gets overlooked, because Katie and I are the same way. We started out as friends. We were friends for months before we started dating. And even then, it was just kind of like that. We kind of looked back on it about a year later and go, "Hold, I mean, are we like dating? Have we been dating this whole time and we just didn't even know it? Like it never was like a formal thing. It just kind of happened, because we were buddies." But I think that's super important, because nowadays, that same technology that helps you keep in touch with the people from your past also is a quick fix to maybe some of those things. And maybe it cuts out some of that middle portion there, that's that relationship building and that development of that friendship, the whole swipe left, swipe right crap. And, the visuals of what attracts you to a person is right there in your face, and you don't often take the time to sit and actually get to know the person. So, I mean, holy crap. Yeah, we could screw Washington, D.C. We could just talk about that for an hour.
Relationships. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, who do you want to go to dinner with, right? Who do you want to walk the dog with? And, I think something that, again, not to go down this path of picking the right partner, but, when we've had our moments of crisis in our life, that is sometimes when we're at our absolute best, working together through an issue and realizing this is not, we're going to get through this. It's going to be fine. Like, why was I even so upset? So I don't know if there are people out there who can relate to that. Thinking like, this is soul crushing. How are we ever going to, overcome this? And then, 2 hours later, you're like, why did I even think that? And I think that I feel very lucky to have a partner like that in my life.
Yeah, well, just to piggyback on what Roscoe was saying, research shows, Brene Brown talks a lot about the fact that we're hardwired for connection. And I think that sometimes with the social media platforms and the dating apps and things like that, it's almost a barrier to real connection, right? And the connection that you're talking about, Jana, where, you've got, because we all need help. We all need support. We all need people in our side and on our team, especially to help us through difficult things. And so I think sometimes for the younger generation, some of those things end up being more of a barrier to creating a deeper connection with folks, because so much of it is so superficial. But that's just me on the soapbox. Yeah. Jana, why'd you pick communications? What led you to study communications in college?
Yeah, because it was fun. I mean, I loved it. I originally had wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to be on the Today Show. I wanted to to be able to be in everyone's TV screen and be a personality. And when I started studying it and realizing like this is actually not the lifestyle that I want for myself,
Mm.
it doesn't mean that it wasn't what I really enjoyed, and I learned a lot from that course of study when I was in college. But I knew when I graduated I wasn't going to necessarily get a job in journalism, and I didn't. I went into corporate America, but I also took all those skills I learned in college, and I've continued to use them through my entire career, because you need to know how to package information. You need to know how to talk in sound bites. You need to know what's going to resonate with people. And like most importantly, and this is actually something that I constantly have to remind myself, I think all of us have to, is just because I can tell you everything that I know about an issue and why I'm right is not the best way to convince somebody to believe in what you're saying. You have to pick those right that right angle and that right talking point, and that like what's going to resonate with them. And I think that's true in any stage, right? Whether you're applying for a job and you're interviewing, whether you're trying to get a promotion, whether you're trying to make that sale, you're trying to get your way, or in any situation in life, you cannot say everything. You have to kind of pick the right path and to make your point, and hope that you pick the right argument.
Yeah. No, I think that's really cool. And I think it's really powerful too, because I mean, communication is so important, right? And being able to communicate effectively is even more important, especially in the
Mhm.
realm that you operate in, but in general too, just for anybody, whether like you're saying, it's a job interview or giving a presentation at work or whatever the case may be. But I think it's great that you talked about how, you kind of had an idea of what you wanted to do going into communications, going into journalism, maybe being, a TV person, things along that line. But then as you got into it and you understood what that required more and more, you pivoted, and it didn't mean that all that work that you had done in college, getting that degree in communications and all the skills that you had learned and acquired during that time couldn't serve you in other capacities. And in fact, you just mentioned that it's served you in just about everything you've done since then. And I think that's really important for especially younger men and women to understand, is it's okay to pivot, right? And it's okay to go, hey, I'm going to take a stab at this and see if it's a fit. And I'm going to collect information. And as I collect that information, if I need to pivot one way or another, then I will. And that's okay, right? That's kind of how we maneuver through that space and figure out what we want to do for ourselves. But it doesn't mean that the time that I spent in pursuit of what I thought I wanted to do is lost, right? Because there's all
Yeah.
these valuable skills and lessons that we learn along the way, not just about, skills that we build that make us effective in whatever we go into, but also the lessons that we learn about ourselves in that process. So,
Yeah. I like that you brought the word pivot into that, because that is something I feel like I mean, I think it's a great word right now, but something I maybe didn't know the previous 20 years is about how to make a pivot, understanding that that's okay. That's not failure. That's success, actually. And to recognize that, you know what, I tried it. This wasn't the right fit. I'm going to take a pivot.
yeah,
I didn't fail. I just recognize like it's time for a change. And that's actually a very adult and mature thing to do. It can help you find that ultimate fulfillment in your career.
yeah. Well, I think what people fail to understand is because they worry about that fear of failure or letting go of something that's tangible or that they're comfortable in when they pivot. I think that can be something that keeps people stuck in a spot too, is that fear of leaving something that you know. Um, but that pivot is what actually helps create opportunity for you, right? Because if you're stagnant in one spot, or if you're in a place that you don't need to be, then it may be more difficult for you to have opportunities just because you're not enjoying what you're doing, right? And so your performance can drop,
Right.
those types of things. But when you pivot and you take that risk and you get out into that new arena, you're actually creating opportunity in your life for yourself. And
Yeah.
that's a huge
Yeah.
thing.
It is, and it's terrifying. Again, like I
It's
feel like
totally,
sometimes the
thank
way I
you.
talk about it, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, it's amazing. It's
Yeah.
like, butterflies and sunshine. Like it's terrifying.
Tell us, give us an example
Yeah.
of a time that was completely terrifying for you.
Okay. I took an 8-year career break. We talked about this. I was in corporate America. I worked in both terms of the Bush administration. I got married. I started having children. Bush lost, and it was kind of a good time to take a break, be home with my small children, and then and I mean, even to this day, I'm like, was that the right decision? And yes, it all worked out for me, but it was terrifying then. It was terrifying during the 8 years that I wasn't working, wondering like, am I ever going to be employed again? Am I ever going to be successful? Will I ever be recognized for the successes I had? And I had the opportunity to re-enter the workforce and not only get a great job, but continue advancing in my career. And I want to say luck, because there was a lot of hard work and that went into that, but that was a terrifying time for me. Not that I would ever admit it, that's how I felt, right? Because it's kind of a dark thought. And I think it's okay to just say that, like, it's not always easy and it doesn't always work out. But I took a lot of steps to try to ensure success for myself.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really important, because I think what you hit on is it's not just like so many times that terrifying aspect of it is the unknowns. It's all the what ifs. Well, if I do this, what does that mean for 8 years from now? Am I even going to be employable? Am I going to be able to find a job? Am I going to be able to reestablish myself? So I think that that's great that you shared that, because it is terrifying. It's scary when you step out on the ledge and you take a little risk in your life. There's
Right.
and I think it's important for people to understand that it's okay. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to be terrified in that moment. What you don't want to do is let that fear or that terror prevent you from taking those steps, right? You've just got to kind of walk into it and then maneuver yourself through it. Because if you let that fear, that terror control you, then you're not going to be able to walk into those opportunities down the road.
Yeah. And Cass, I want to actually take it a step further, because when I got the call to serve in the Trump administration in 2017, there were a lot of pieces that kind of fell into place. And, they basically called and said, we'd love to have you. Can you start, once you do your paperwork, like tomorrow? And I had 3 small children at the house. I actually didn't know what I was going to do. They weren't providing any guidance necessarily. And you don't want to ask, because if you start being difficult, they'll be like, oh, never mind, like, you're too much work. And so I just showed up on my first day, and having not worked for 8 years, that was again a very, I had no idea what to expect. And if I made it look easy, it doesn't mean it felt easy, because it's like, how do I write an email? What changed in 8 years, right? Like, what technology changed? And that was another,
you had probably taken all your dresses to Goodwill by that point too. So, I mean,
no, I hadn't.
I mean, a girl's got to go shopping. You know what I'm saying?
I was totally out of style. I did go shopping, and my way there. But yeah.
Hashtag nailed it. See that?
Good job, Roscoe.
Yeah. Hey, man. I mean, it's one of those things. So the question that I wanted to ask, though, as you were telling that, I was just sitting here thinking, I've recently done a lot of reflecting on my life and on my career and my post-military career, and gotten a chance to jot some things down and explore some things that I haven't really talked about or thought about in, decades, really. And I'm curious, from your point of view, after hearing that story, from your gap there that you had, what was the internal messaging? What was Jana talking to Jana about? Was it a negative thing? I mean, obviously you're bonding with your kids and that's awesome and everything, but you seem like a fairly driven person who wants to be out there doing the thing. And I don't want to throw the regret word around, but I mean, what was your internal dialogue like during that time?
So it's a great question, and I again feel very lucky to have had the opportunity to be able to not work and support my husband's career, who has a very demanding job, and having him know that I could take care of everything, and I was very good at that. I had to like channel my energies in other ways. So I was like, I'm gonna learn to play tennis. And so I learned how to play tennis. And I went from having never played tennis before to being on the top, tennis team at the club I played at. I raised money for my kids' schools and raised like, 6 figures, a lot of money. And it did volunteer work and, super involved. And I loved it. It was very rewarding and fulfilling. And at some point, it was probably 6 years in, it just started feeling like I'm doing all this work. I'm working and I'm not being paid for it. And am I okay with that? And at some point, it just didn't feel like it was okay for me anymore. And I still am very, very close to my friends who don't work, and it just, for me, it was like, I think I can take a chance and just see like what would happen, like, what's out there. Let's take the risk. Let's risk failure. I could go back to work and everyone say like, look at the old lady who has bad clothes and doesn't know how like email works. Right. Like, like all my worst fears, but that's not what happens.
That dress is so 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Jeez.
No,
No, but that's
I do know. Yeah. I talked with my friends too. Like, I'm gonna jump. I'm gonna jump off the cliff. I have no idea what's there, and I'm gonna be okay with what happens. Either I will be caught or I won't, and either way, at least I'll know. And I have zero regrets about that.
That's awesome, because one of the things that we've talked about on the podcast several times is the idea of courage over comfort, right? And I think, a lot of people, and then maybe even in that situation you were in, Jenna, it was probably like it would have been comfortable. Like, you may not have enjoyed all the aspects of it, but it would have been comfortable to stay where you were, right? But it took a lot of courage for you to go, well, you know what? I'm going to try. I'm going to step out, see what happens. You can always fall back to something else if you need to, but like that, what you demonstrated there, I think, is a great example of that courage over comfort piece. That a lot of people, that a trap that a lot of people fall into.
Yeah, I think that, a couple of things. I think that I felt comfortable taking that risk because I knew my friends were going to support me. And of course, the biggest fear was like, what if they're not my friends anymore? Because when I went back to work, I took a really super demanding job. I had no idea that was going to be in front of me. And there were times where, like, I couldn't go to their big birthday party. I couldn't be there when they were having issues. I couldn't be at every single child's event. But you know what? Here I am, 2025, and they're still my best friends. My kids still love me. My husband's still there. And I think actually it made our marriage stronger because we really had to go look at it as a family together. And how are we going to adjust with mom going back to work? And what does that mean as a family? And everyone, it was fine. The world didn't end. And actually it was again, like it was, I think, good for my kids to take more responsibility for themselves. And my mom worked. I don't even know why I even had to think twice about it. I know how to make my own lunch then. I know how to make my own lunch now, and now my kids do too, and they do their own laundry. Like, I get like these are little things that you have to like get through, but it was fine. It was great.
Yeah. Well, that's a great segue into a question that I had for you, because like, what's been the value of building relationships, just not only through your professional career, but then also personally? Because it sounds like because of the relationships that you were able to build, you were able to really get a very strong kind of support, a team of support around you through those transitions and through all those aspects. So can you talk a little bit about like the importance of building relationships, or maybe even highlight if there's been any people that really stand out as mentors for you through the course of this, and the impact that they had?
Yeah, I first want to start with my team. And you said this a few minutes ago about having a team around you. And I've always had a team around me of friends, mentors, coaches who influence my decisions, who I can go to with questions. Even now, 10 years ago, I rely on them, and everybody needs a team around them, because they will give you truth and honesty and support. And you may not like what they have to say. And so you need a range of voices around you. And I feel very lucky to have, CEOs, leaders in different stages of their career, to be able to talk what I'm, with my every situation, and say, well, how did you handle this? What do you think is happening here? And you don't find that overnight. You build that. So in my career, I've had jobs where my job was to network a lot and to know a lot of people, and having a lot of people come through my office either for interviews and hiring and moving around, and recognizing that that was always going to be an asset for me, and maintaining that. So when I was in the private sector, when I was in the Bush administration, and then when I took 8 years off, I didn't stop networking. I didn't stop talking to people. I kind of pursued different hobbies, but I always kept my interests, and understood I had to keep, stay on top of the news, understand what's current, understand how things are changing, and making sure that I had a network of people that I could talk to, so that when I went back to work, I could ask them, what do you think? Is this normal? Is this not normal? And and I remember, oh my gosh, it was like the first couple of months I went back. We went to dinner with friends, like a Friday night. We were at Cafe Milano, anyone who knows DC. And like I sat down and I like burst into tears, talking to like some of our very best couple friends. And my friend's husband was like, you need to like toughen up. You. That's great advice. Actually, I do. Like, I had a bit of a thin skin. I hadn't been in it, and he's like, "This is kind of normal, and like, you just need to, get a thicker skin." And I valued that tough advice, because I wanted to be like, "Oh my God, he's so mean, poor Jana," and like, no, it was like, you actually need to like stop. So, and that hasn't stopped. That hasn't stopped. Again, I've had a really nice career, and I pay it forward, and I believe in mentoring those who work for me and come to me for advice, because I've had the luxury of having those people in my life who I can also turn to.
That's an really interesting story that has so many layers that we could go down. But for a second, I just wanted to go back to something that you said very early on in that little vignette, and that was, you surrounded yourself by the people, and they gave me all this advice, and I had these mentors and coaches, and I wanted to listen to those people. And I think that's great if you surround yourself with the right people. And one thing that I think we've probably all been bit by at one time or another, anybody who's been in a profession for any length of time, is probably those people who are giving you advice, not generally out of the kindness of their heart, or maybe not nefarious or malicious necessarily, but maybe there's an element of subterfuge layered in there, and I think as we're building those people, we refer to that here in our show, in our universe, we refer to it as our circle of 5, those 5 people that you surround yourself with, that you want to emulate and that you lean on to for those rough times, and the conversation and the feedback and bouncing ideas off of each other. And you don't necessarily have to have one group. You can have multiple groups, depending on, like, the example that I use is, the group that you go to the gym with, and then there's a group that you work with, and then there's a group that you go to church with, there's a group that you go camping with, and you get something different out of each one of those, provided that you're surrounding yourself with the right people. You don't want your close teammates to be leading you down the wrong path. So it sounds like you did a good job doing that. Do you have any filters, or do you have any, what's your litmus test for this person is going to be in my inner circle versus, sorry, dude, you got to go. You're not invited to my close circle here.
Yeah. That is a great point. for me, I look at the people whose career paths I want or value or admire. And it doesn't mean that I want their job. It means I appreciate how they got to where they are, and they are, a step above me. And so it really oftentimes means asking people who aren't in my profession, who don't have a vested interest in me succeeding or failing, people who are outside of that. And again, a lot of my career has been in politics, but some of the best advice and people that I lean on are hardcore Democrats who, do not like Trump, never liked Trump, and then or now, and when I was in the White House from before, they would still listen to me and give me really good advice, and actually told me a lot about who they are, that they cared about me as a person. They wanted me to succeed, not only for our country, but because of our friendship and level. And so there are little indicators like that, right, that you need to look at. And I wouldn't necessarily spill to everybody and ask anybody for advice. It's kind of, you kind of feel it out and then see and then talk and get a reaction and then be able to kind of nurture that relationship as well. And it's been very meaningful for me to be able to listen or ask someone who comes from a very different perspective, like, what do you think I should, how do you think I should handle this? What do you think I should have done differently? What is your reaction? And it doesn't mean I take their advice either. And sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. Yeah. I mean, like, it's just advice. Also, I do think that you cannot always rely on the same people over and over again. You have to recognize that these are important people with busy lives, a lot of responsibility, and you do have to think about utilizing their time in the right way and not taking advantage of it. And I'm also very aware of that.
Well, that asking for advice from somebody on the other side reminds me of a conversation I had last week, actually, with someone. And in the middle of this conversation, we were just kind of going back and forth. It's work drama. And he says, Roscoe, you've always struck me as a very contemplative person. And maybe that's because you were a fighter pilot for a long time, or maybe that's because you were a football coach or a dad or what. But you always seem to be able to see both sides of an argument. And I looked right at him. I was like, dude, like, if you don't understand your enemy's position, how are you going to win? You have to invite that, and you have to consider it for a second. And the example that you use with politics is a great message to our listeners, Cass, on not being married to the color jersey that you wear. Like, there's smart people out there everywhere, and it's okay to talk to those people. It's okay to have friends who are on the other side. It's okay to have mentors who are on the other side. And Cass and I just dropped an episode it came out this morning, where the first 20 minutes of it were me and him kind of disagreeing on a couple of things politically. But I mean, it doesn't mean that we're not friends anymore. If anything, I think it makes you better friends, because you realize that, no matter what I say, Cass is going to listen to me, and he may not agree with it, but he'll at least listen and give it, give it service. And then, we'll move on from there. So great point with the politics. It's so fucking divisive right now.
Yeah, it is.
It's just atrocious right now.
Jana.
It was. I mean, 2017 was horrible. I feel like we're in a bit of it's not, but I'm in DC, so maybe I'm in a bit of a bubble compared to it's like
maybe.
In the
No,
States.
I just think it's great that who would have thought that it's okay to talk to people that you may disagree with and actually get, information and advice from them as well. Like,
and don't unfriend each other. Yeah.
Like, one of the things that we talk about on the podcast is, stay curious, be curious, right? Don't be judgmental necessarily. And that's important, because even if you disagree with somebody, just listening and trying to understand their perspective and maybe even the lens that they view the world through is information, right? And it's something that can provide information to the way that you see things that maybe you didn't realize before, and can lead you to a different understanding of whatever that topic is or whatever that issue is, right? And so I think that's really important, and I'm glad that you said that. That's really cool.
Yeah, it really showed me their character too.
It
And
comes
these
down
are
to
people who
character.
I want to be in my life because again, back in 2016, that election in 2017, it was a very difficult time. My kids were bullied at school by very good friends. Teachers were wearing like resist, lanyards, which I thought was very unfair to my children. We had like signs put outside of our house multiple times. Like it was a difficult time, and so and time when I lost friends, and so to have people who said like we don't have to agree on politics, but I'm going to support you as a person because I love you as a friend, and that I really treasure that, and recognizing who those people are who will be there for you no matter what, even if you disagree, is the kind of the greatest gift, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. Which is starting to make me question my relationship with Roscoe if it's based on character.
That's valid.
Just joking.
Yeah. No, that
Yeah.
copy shot. PK miss.
Yeah.
Hey, so we we bounce all around there, but there's something. Well, no, but we kind of jumped from college journalism, communication, met my husband, he's an awesome dude, to oh, by the way, I was in the White House, and here I am wearing 8 years ago dresses. But how did you guys get from Houston to Washington? And we, so you ended up you out of school. By the way, if you haven't listened to the Sean Ryan podcast with Megyn Kelly on it, I think you'd really enjoy it if you haven't heard it already. But her path to where she's at now is similar to yours, but inverted. Like she was a law student, she went to law school, and she found herself in this partnership, and then inadvertently almost got into journalism, and then fell in love with that. So really interesting pathway there. Just more testament to keep your aperture open, look at the horizon. But my point is, how do we get from Houston to 2 terms in the White House?
So again, I met my husband who was working on the Bush campaign, and that was my introduction to politics. However, I had, my major was journalism, news public affairs. I always had a huge interest in government and politics, and so when we were falling in love, understanding that he was always going to go back to DC, and me recognizing, like, sure, like that would be great. Like I'll go to DC. Like why not? And because I didn't know.
Had you ever been to DC?
I mean, when I was in 8th grade.
All right.
We all go to DC in 8th grade.
That's shit. That was back when the Washington Monument was being built. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's go back.
I know. But it just all like made sense at the time. Of course, I mean, now that I'm a mother and have children who are rapidly approaching adulthood, like I can't even believe it. But yeah, it all made sense. Again, it wasn't all laid out for me, but it was kind of like, why not? And my husband is a risk taker as well in his career. I mean, a well thought out risk taker, and that has worked for him. So Bush won. And then he, we had, it was, I mean, if you remember back in 2001, it was a delayed declaration. So I actually, my husband had,
yeah,
I know. So he actually was, went ahead, and I like moved him out of his apartment, which is a whole nother story. And as well, it's pretty funny. Anyways, I won't get into it for his sake, but moved him and like joined him in DC, and didn't know what was going to be there, but had the opportunity to be able to join the Bush administration. Again, I said this, like I took the first job that was offered to me. It took some time. I was offered a job in the Department of Education in the office of, at the time it was called Vocational Adult Education. Now it's Career Technical and Adult Education. I didn't know anything about it, but I just kind of threw myself into it. worked for an amazing assistant secretary named Carol D'Amico from Indiana, and just became like her right hand, special assistant. And I read every single piece of mail that came through her desk. Wrote newsletters for her, went to meetings, just absorbed everything I could in this subject area, and helped her to accomplish her agenda and what her goals were. And then a few years later, I became the chief of staff of that. And there's some steps happened in between then, but I became the chief of staff of that office at like 27 or 28 years old, where, it's a $1.6 billion office at the time, managing people who were 2 times, maybe 3 times my age, and it was like my first time ever managing anybody. It was like such a like throwing in the deep end, but there's a lot of opportunity in the area. I think I was willing to take the opportunity, see what I can do with it, and do my best and make the most of it, and it worked out.
Yeah, well, that had to be terrifying too. All of a sudden going into a job where you're like, I don't even know anything about this stuff.
Yeah. And they're like, explain to me like, this is where our funding comes from. I still remember like a little piece of paper where one of the deputy secretary like wrote out each of the like funding streams that came, how the office was funded, and like where everything. I didn't know anything. There was no orientation. I just started and like go.
Yeah.
Now, were you in the White House at this point, or are you just some building somewhere?
No, so I'm at the Department of Education at this point, and again, I kind of gave it my all, and so I was promoted quickly, and was lucky with that. I had that opportunity, and then in Bush's second term, when Margaret Spellings became Secretary of Education, there was an opportunity for me to become the White House liaison for education the department. And what a White House liaison does is they do all the hiring, firing, moving, promoting of all political appointees within an agency and boards and commissions. So we had 130 to 180 appointees, which was the second highest at the time. That's a whole other story, and probably why it's under target by DOGE. I don't want to get us off onto another topic, but we actually had fewer appointees than some other administrations, but there's just a lot of opportunities to put in political. So always a lot of movement. So my job was to work with the White House, make sure that appointees were being put into place who were furthering the agenda of the president and the secretary.
So at that point, you work out of the White House, is that right?
I worked at the agency and then worked with the White House to make sure that that what we were doing was in line with what they wanted.
So what was it like the first time you went into the White House? Like seriously, no. And I'm not trying to be like facetious or anything, because I can imagine that I would be walking around with like big city eyes, like, oh my God, I can't believe, I look back on my life and I didn't accomplish, like, I haven't been to the White House. I haven't done anything super cool, but I still look back on my time just from the time that I was a little kid growing up on a farm. And I look at where I'm at now and I'm like, holy shit, what a ride. How the hell did I end up here? So I can only imagine walking into the White House and being like, not only am I here, but I think I actually belong here. Like I think maybe I'm in the right place. So what was that like?
No, I mean, it is the people's house, and again, having been there as a child in 8th grade, as in like the public tour, and then being able to go to meetings there, like it never got old, and that's even as something as I advanced in my career. It was like parking inside the gates at the White House, right? It's called the West Exec parking. If anybody, but like they use flash your badge and they let you in, and then you park, and then you like walk right up the stairs to your office. Like it never got old, and if it ever got old, it was like, this is my time to
Wayne's
leave.
World, when they were backstage at the concert and they're holding their badges up to everybody like this. That's totally what I would be doing. I have a badge. I'm supposed to be here. See this? See?
Yeah. No. And so funny story, amazing story. my husband proposed to me in the rose garden of the White House.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing story. So, we've been dating, and anyone out there can relate. We've been dating a year, and I was like, okay, like, are you gonna propose? Like, I moved out here for you, and he takes me on a tour of the White House or the West Wing. This is pre 9/11. So the security, it was a different security profile than it was post 9/11, and he takes me on this tour, and I was like, oh my god, everybody is smiling, had the biggest smiles on their faces, like everyone's like so happy to be here, right? And it's like the world's longest tour, and we end up in the Rose Garden, and I'm like, oh god, everyone, like, they're so informative, it's great. So we end up in the Rose Garden, and then our tour guide is like, this is like a Friday at 5 o'clock, and our tour guide's like, oh, my boss needs me, and she like runs inside of the West Wing, and we're left alone in the Rose Garden, and all I can think is like, we're gonna get arrested, like, you can't just be left alone.
We're gonna be
right?
shot.
That's great.
Like, Michael, my husband's like sweating, and then he's like, I love you so much, you're amazing, and I'm like, oh my god, like, where like the police, and then he proposes, like, and then it was all, of course, pre-planned. All of our friends were watching from the chief of staff's office. The White House photographer was like taking photos, and after I said yes, everybody came out, and I mean, it was he hit a home run. It was amazing.
That's cool.
And so again, like, it kind of brings home, like, I can't believe not only I got engaged at the White House, like in the Rose Garden. It was a pretty amazing, amazing story.
So unfortunately, I had to cut that whole part out there because I proposed to Katie at an Outback Steakhouse, and I can't have her hearing this shit, right? So I can't compete with that. But that's that story, that getting engaged in the Rose Garden. Boy, that's got to be a short list of people, right?
Yeah.
It's longer than you think, but it's amazing. And like, it made the like Washington Post, like the gossip column, it made the New York Times. I mean, it was like such a surreal moment. But
so now you take that from, you're standing there in the Rose Garden, and he finally put a ring on it, and then you look back at 10-year-old Jana, and you look back and you go, how the fuck did I get here?
I mean, seriously.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that one of those like pinch me moments? Like, holy crap, man, what a wild ride.
Right. No, and again, like, it always felt like, of course, like, this is exactly, if I had ever could dream big enough, this is exactly what I would have dreamed for. But like, I didn't even know it was like in the realm of possibility, and it's tremendous. And I still feel that about the jobs I've had, and the opportunities I've had, and I also do have to credit it's faith, because I do think that when you're in some of these positions, you do feel like, I'm here for a reason, and I need to make the most of it, and for the greater good, and understand, like, I'm here for a short period of time. So why am I here? What am I supposed to accomplish? And let's live up to what the potential could be.
Jen, I got a question for you. So obviously you go to work at Department of Education, you move up, it sounds like, relatively quick. You're very young as a chief of staff. And I know, and if we're honest, sometimes it's luck and timing, right? Sometimes it's, you just happen to be in the right spot at the right time, or like, I don't remember the name, but the first person that you worked for, before you pleaded up to chief of staff, when you first went to Department of Education, maybe that was just a really good fit. You guys really hit it off. So luck and timing is a part of it, right? But beyond that, there's a lot of effort, and there's a lot of work that I'm sure you put in to kind of continue to create opportunities for you along the way. Could you talk about that a little bit? Like, what was the thing that separated you? What was the thing that allowed you to create those opportunities while you were there?
I think that,
and it's okay if you brag on yourself a little bit right now.
I know, I won't, but I also think it's important to give credit where credit is due, right? I mean, I went in there and said, okay, she comes in at 7 a.m. And so I'm going to be here at 7 a.m. Like, I'm going to be the first person in the office besides my boss. And then, I would beat her in, and she was like, I actually need you not to be here when I'm here. I need a little bit of time before I get here. But like, my kind of goal was like, I'm going to be the first one in, and I'm going to be the last one to leave. And cause like, no one's going to outwork me. And so that was my goal and my reputation. And so that's what allowed me to move up. Now, no task was beneath me. I was never afraid to learn. I was always interested. I wasn't, when I became a chief of staff, when we had someone who had took my role, who's at some point, and she was like doing a crossword puzzle during like a senior staff meeting. Like, what are you doing? Like, if you're doing a crossword puzzle, then you shouldn't be here at all. I mean, like, this is interesting. And if you're not learning from it, then like quit, and like, I'm gonna replace you with somebody else, because like, this is a gift to be in this opportunity. And that's kind of how I always approached it. And even as like a chief of staff to Mrs. Pence, second lady, like, I would move furniture if I needed to, like, whatever. I would do a photo line, whatever it took to make sure it, success would happen. I was always willing to do it.
I think that's so important too, because I think a lot of times ego gets in the way, and, maybe people get into positions like that, and there might be a fear of, because they don't understand things so much, but they want to present or represent themselves as kind of knowing everything or being capable of everything, but they don't ask questions, and they try to play it off like they know what they're doing when they don't really know what they're doing. And eventually that all comes back to bite you. And so I think, the fact that you kind of showed up and were just like, hey, I'm a sponge. I'll learn. I'll do whatever you need me to do. No job is too small and no job is too big. I'll take on whatever task you give me, and I'll give it 100%. I think that's so important and so huge to stress on, especially younger generation listeners that we may have, who are just maybe starting career paths. Like, effort and work and, humility go a long ways in opening up opportunities for, one, you to learn, but two, for you to promote. Yeah. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I do. And also, since COVID, I've been able to work from home for the first time in my career, and I love it. I'm able to do a hybrid situation. But back in the first 20 years of my career, 15 years of my career, like, that was never an option. And, I don't know if everyone knows how old Roscoe is and his wife, but if you can age me, but like, I couldn't even, when I was in the Bush administration, like, I had a BlackBerry. So if my kids were sick, which were like all the time,
I don't have to age you just age yourself.
Yeah, no doubt.
I worked from a BlackBerry. I mean, it was like, how do you work it was very difficult. And I do think that, I made the most of it. Expectations are a little different now, but I think if you be in the office, go in the office, because you recognize the people who are there putting the extra effort in. And it goes a long way, especially when you're starting out in your career or you're starting a new job.
Gosh, you're beating all these drums that we beat all the time, huh, Cass? Yeah. The effort, hey, when you're young, you got to pay your
hard
dues,
work.
and you got to be that first in, last out kind of person, because that's how you build that reputation. And throughout your career, your reputation precedes you. But the piece that I don't want our listeners to miss, and I'll go back to maybe about 10, 15 minutes ago when you were talking about your faith and your purpose and that kind of stuff. And I think that gets lost a little bit sometimes. And I don't even want to go down the faith road, but I want to say to the listeners, like, there's some good messaging that Jana's been talking about here, and it's find your purpose, find your passion, whatever that is, man, and start to pull on that thread a little bit and see what unravels. And the other key piece that I really liked that you brought into it inadvertently was gratitude, extreme gratitude for not only the blessing of being in the position that you were in, meeting the right guy at the right time who took you to the right place so that you could do the right things and meet the right people. I mean, that stuff just doesn't happen by accident a lot of times, but we still have to give credit where credit's due. And that's something that I wish I would have done a little bit more when I was younger. I think I'm getting better at it now. But I wish that I'd have done that a little bit more in maybe my late 20s, early 30s, is have that attitude of gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with that. And I mean, I would say first, because, it's something that sometimes it kind of bugs me, but, and you're not saying this, but, yes, I was in the right place at the right time, but I made the most of it and I was able to deliver. And
Oh
so
yeah,
when
you
I go,
100% did the work.
yeah, and
You
I know, it's something that I
it's like
talk about.
it's like that saying, and I saw this in a meme the other. I totally cut you off there. Cass is going to yell at me for interrupting again, but there was a meme that I saw the other day, and it said, "Hey, it's okay to ask God to move the mountain, but don't be surprised if He gives you a shovel." Right? So, like, you still have to do the work, man. If somebody gives you an opportunity, you still owe you. Like, it's not just going to manifest, right? Success is not just going to manifest. You still got to put in the time and effort.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there are a few people I know in Washington, because everybody knows somebody in Washington. There are a few people who maybe get a job because of who they know. If they don't deliver, they do not stay in it. And there's, again, a handful of people. You may get a meeting, you may get 5 minutes, but if you cannot deliver, you're done. They move on. So, number one, like, make the most of those opportunities that come your way. Like, be prepared, and then understand, like, that if you do all the work beforehand, if you are, you're putting the time in, you're doing your research, you're that when that time comes, it's a little easier to show your worth and show and deliver on it. Because ultimately people are looking for good people, and they're looking for people they can trust and build their network with as well. And you want to be one of those people that they call.
Yeah, so just a couple of things to piggyback on if I can real quick. So what you were just saying, Jana, is the separations in the preparation, right? And so when you put in the effort and you put in the work up front to master your craft, master your skill, to know what you need to know, then when you have that opportunity in front of whoever that person is, you're prepared, right? You're more prepared, and that separates you from the rest of the group. But the other thing I was going to talk about too is something that Roscoe brought up, and you kind of did too, and that's just reputation, right? And one of the things, especially with the post-COVID world, with all of the opportunities to work remotely, I think that really affects. And I understand that some people, that's what works best for their lifestyle, or maybe just where they're at in life right now. But I think it's difficult to build a reputation, and to an even greater respect, to build relationships with your team and your coworkers when you have a couple of Zoom meetings a week for an hour or two that you see each other, right? It's really hard to show your worth, to show your work ethic, and to build a reputation for yourself in that kind of environment. So I agree with you in the sense that if you have an opportunity to go into work, you will benefit, I think, much more if you're trying to progress your career by doing that than you will by being in a remote position. And then the last thing I would just say is kind of what you guys were referring to, and that's just like, my hat's off to you, Jana, because like you said, yeah, I got moved to DC, but you could have moved to DC and worked at Starbucks, right? Or just gone shopping or done whatever you wanted to do, right? You didn't have, but you actually, are you familiar with that Teddy Roosevelt quote, "Man in the Arena"?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's one of my favorite quotes, and I use it as a metaphor on the podcast all the time. And that's the difference, right? Is you actually got in the arena. Like, you got in there, you jumped in, but with both feet. You were willing to get, muddy and dusty and bloodied and beat up. And yeah, you may have failed, but you would have never known if you hadn't taken those opportunities and just jumped into it and done your best and given it your best effort and put your best work and your best foot forward. You would have never known what the result of that would be. And because you did that, more opportunities continue to be created for you. So my hat's off to you for that, man. That's what we're trying to encourage people to do, is just get in the fucking arena.
Yeah, you create your own luck. Right. And even if you, again, like, I encourage you to be in the, if you can't though, be responsive, like, respond right away, deliver on promises, return phone calls, that goes a long way too. I mean, some of my colleagues are aren't in DC or on the road a lot, and so knowing if they text me or call me, hey, what is that one thing, and I respond, like they know they can rely on me, and that is and the same thing. Like, the people I reach out to, they know, like, if I'm always working, and if I can ask them a question, they're going to respond. Like, it doesn't mean that they're, they don't have work-life balance. It's ills, but they're ready and they understand, like, this is a priority, and you need to be checking. Yeah, certainly. Something else that you said, and now I'm forgetting what it was. We were talking about the team, faith. No, I think what it was about, find what gives you purpose. And I want to go back to that because, I've served, most of my career has been in public service. I've served in the government, for the greater good. I'm in a nonprofit. I've been in a nonprofit space for a while. And I think that sometimes you can like romanticize that, like, oh, it's, that's more worthy than being in a for-profit or corporate America. And that isn't the case. I think it's finding what you're good at, what you love, and like what drives you. That really is what matters. And I think that is the most important. So don't feel like you have to be in government or you have to be in the nonprofit world for your work to matter, because it's just not the way what it is.
Now, there's something that you said right then, though, that I want to maybe question or at least bring up, where you said something that you're good at and something you enjoy. Well, I would play devil's advocate for just a second, and I would almost say, do what you want to do, and if you put in the effort to it, you can get good at it. Because you don't necessarily have to have talent in a specific area necessarily, right? You don't have to be a gifted public speaker to get into speaking and giving those elevator pitches and things like that. That's a skill that you can develop along the way if you put in the right work and put in the right effort and surround yourself with the right people. All the things that we've talked about already. So not to totally poo-poo on what you just said, but yes, it helps if you're good at it, for sure. Like Steph Curry is really good at basketball, but he didn't win the 3-point record by just being good at basketball and being a talented athlete. He worked his ass off shooting 3-pointers for his entire adult life, and so yeah, I think there's an element there for sure. But I'm glad that you brought up the nonprofit thing, because I kind of wanted to jump into, in the pregame when we were talking, you said that you've got some irons in the fire right now and you don't really know how those are going to shake out. So let's maybe put that aside for the second. But I know that you were involved in some of the nonprofits, some of the 3C type things. The ACP is the one that I remember that comes right to the top of my nugget, because I was a part of those guys as well. And I wanted you to talk about that a little bit, and the importance of going back now that we're entering that time of our life where we're maybe considered elders in the community, and we can give back to the younger generations a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to talk about this. I also want to affirm what you said about working hard on things you're not good at, and I 100% agree with that, because just because someone makes it looks easy doesn't mean it is. And I do a lot of public speaking. It doesn't mean that I didn't 5 years ago practice giving speeches in the mirror or recording myself on Zoom and then playing it back mortified and making notes to like.
I still do that.
Yeah.
I still do that. I'm going to Embry-Riddle to give a talk to the ROTC cadets next week, and I will stand in here this weekend and record myself and then debrief myself.
Right. It gets easier, but like there's like hours spent on it, and we are not alone. I know other very, very successful people who deliver a lot of arguments and practice multiple times until it's easy for them, and so and that's okay. And sometimes a job you love, it doesn't mean everything that you have to do in that job is what you're really good at. It doesn't mean you have to stop trying. So ACP, you brought that up, and And ACP is a great nonprofit organization that pairs veterans and active duty military spouses with mentors. So I've mentored two spouses through the program. I worked on opening their DC office and helped them grow. I'm a different organization now, but what I love about ACP is again, like using your knowledge to help somebody who's going through a transition process and being part of their team and giving them that advice as they're going through, whatever they might be. And actually today I took a 15-minute call with somebody from ACP. They asked if I'd be willing to speak to a veteran who was kind of curious about life and government and what that would mean. So, I mean, we covered a ton of ground in 15 minutes. Like, I only have 15 minutes. What do you need? Like, let's go through it. And I'm happy to be able to help him where I can, in the future. But there are a lot of people like me, like us, who will always say, if you ask for help, we'll always say yes, because we recognize, people did that for us and are willing to help as well. So I think that if any of your listeners don't want to ask for help, don't ask, don't be afraid, ask for help, be specific, be respectful of someone's time. But we all got where we are because we asked for help, and people listen. So I definitely encourage those to reach out.
So ACP is American. Check me if I'm wrong on this, but American Corporate Partners.
American Corporate Partners.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I have a question: do you have to be a veteran to be a mentor at ACP?
No, I'm not a veteran. Nor am I a military spouse. So at ACP, only a third of mentors are veterans, which I think is fascinating. It's people like me who want to give back, who care about our military. And I think it's a great perspective for somebody who hasn't served to say, well, this was my military experience. How do I pivot into corporate America or nonprofit? And how do I explain my experience? And also, if you're explaining what you're doing, and I'm reading your resume and I have no idea what it means, that means somebody who's reading your resume in corporate America is not going to know either. So
that's valid.
It's a chance to kind of work through that before you get to that point.
Yeah, that's I never thought about it like that.
Yeah,
I got to mentor a young kid who was coming out of active duty. And he was the third person that I was put in touch with. I turned down two other guys because it just wasn't a good match, or I didn't quite speak the language that they were trying to get into. But me and this kid, we actually really bonded, and he's been on the show. He's a great kid. And I wondered about that because, and I told him up front, I said, look, man, I mean, I retired from the military. I did one job interview and I got one job. Like, I'm not this person who has a ton of experience in job interviews and resume building and maybe even networking to that extent. I remember looking at my LinkedIn when I retired, and literally all of my contacts were military guys. I'm like, well, that doesn't help me at all. Shit, they're all still active duty military dudes, and half of their profile pictures were in uniform. I'm like, well, fuck. I'm like, that was a waste.
Yeah.
This is a glorified Facebook page is what this is. So no, but that's a good point. So for our listeners who are not in the military, or maybe you're military adjacent, maybe you're a military spouse, or maybe your brother's in the military or something like that, it's an opportunity to give back to the community a little bit, and it's low threat. I found it very easy and super rewarding. I still keep in touch with Anthony. He's a good dude and he's crushing. I love it.
Yeah. No, I still talk to my former protege, and again, an ally of them. So if you know anyone who's transitioning or has served and again connected to the military, look at ACP. I'd also recommend looking at Hiring Our Heroes, another nonprofit. That's a nonprofit who connects veterans and transitioning military service members and spouses directly with employers who are looking to hire military talent. So they have over 150 corporate partners. They do career fairs, and they do resume help, professional development, and all sorts of things. And so I think if you have already are in the workforce and looking for new opportunities, it's a great place to check out and see, like, who really, again, cares about recognizing the value of having that military experience and what that can bring to the workforce as a place to start when you're looking for a career.
I thought Cass was itching to ask a question.
No. I think all that stuff's awesome, and thanks for bringing that up. Those are great resources.
Yeah,
and thanks for all the work that you're doing with that stuff too, Jana. That's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah.
So you're still active in both of those right now, is that right?
Yes.
On top of everything else that you're doing?
Well, I mean, like, Hired and Heroes employs me, and I'm a volunteer with American Corporate Partners. But yeah, again, like it's rewarding, and and I'm good at it, and but it's nice to be able to kind of match my my DC experience, my DC network, with being able to give back to the military community.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you bring that up because, excuse me, we are a military community and we need a sponsor and somebody to produce and network for us. So there you go. We can be your charity case, and I will gladly take that on to be your charity case.
All right, yeah. Well, when this stops recording, I'll get the specs for you.
I'm kind of a busy person, so it's going to take a while to get on my calendar, but tell them to be patient.
What I would say is, like, you should always be responsive though, and make sure you're always.
Yeah,
well,
that's right.
I can send them a text. Yeah, we'll text. Or WhatsApp. That's kind of my new thing right now. Is I'm enjoying learning how to do WhatsApp. So I think I'm cool because I know how to do whatever. So in the kind of told the listeners in the beginning, like, Jana is she's a returning guest, but her first episode didn't air because there was a recording issue, right? So she's sort of a returning guest, but she's sort of a first timer. So there was a question that I asked you in the first time that we tried this, and it was about you and your husband in the White House.
Well, hold on,
Roscoe. I'm not going to ask you that. Before you go, I'm not going to ask that question again, Cass. I'm not going to ask that question again. But I am going to ask, after he proposed to you in the Rose Garden, did you guys at least get to make out in like a secret elevator or something?
Well, there's like cameras everywhere.
Jesus, can't.
Fine.
Katie and I would have been all over that place. We would have been in the roses. What are you talking about?
Yeah, hey, Jana. No, but I wanted to get back to Jana's story. Because I don't think we've actually fleshed out the fact that you worked directly for the second lady, but that was the last position that you held, correct?
Yeah, I forgot about that.
So the last position I held in government, correct. So I was chief of staff to the second lady, and I was a deputy assistant to the president. So for those of you who don't know, there are commissioned officer positions, which are essentially equivalent to you're presidentially appointed. So there's a prestige that comes with it. You should be referring to me as the Honorable Jana Toner, because I do get to keep that. Yeah.
Well, I know what's going on in the thumbnail now.
The Honorable Jana Toner.
No one ever refers to, but yeah, I'm passing that information on to you. It was a tremendous experience. Again, I had never met Mrs. Pence before she hired me. It was kind of it was at the right place, right time. I had a lot of things leading up to it that put me in that position.
And how did you get hired for that position?
I was in the White House in the Office of Presidential Personnel. I worked for Johnny DeStefano at the time, who was the Director of Presidential Personnel, and I had at that time I had a portfolio of agencies. In the first year, just trying to get as many political appointees into position as possible, including getting those nominated and through the Senate confirmation process. It's a very long process, especially during that time. And there's 3,000 appointees that need to be in place for an administration. So it takes a while to get through all that. And so I was in that office, and I was, talking to him, hey, I may be interested in something like a job, something like this. I don't know if you've know if that job's open. And he said, actually, Karen Pence is looking for a new chief of staff. You'd be great at that. I mean, and it's just me talking to him about, I might be interested in this. What do you think? Is there any opportunity? And what are your thoughts? And he just happened to be asked like the day before, find out that the second lady needed a new chief of staff. So obviously there were other candidates in the mix, but got my resume over to her, met with her chief of staff at the time, met with Mrs. Pence. I had, I put like writing samples together, like whatever you need, I'll do it like immediately. And she decided that was the right fit for her, and started like 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later. It was over, I think she interviewed me like maybe like December 22nd, and I started after the new year. It was incredible. I was like pitching myself because it was, again, I just thought it was a job that you had to either been in her office or come from Indiana. And that's just not the way it worked. And we had a very successful relationship.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's one of those jobs where it's not like you walk in and say, oh, here's your manual, how to be a chief of staff to a principal.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, well, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
Like, my job is to make it, you to carry out, what your goals are as second lady, and what do you want to be remembered for? And so during our interview, she talked about how she really cared about military spouses, and so like day one, I was like, okay, like let's create an initiative around military spouses, and who do you need to talk to? What does that look like? How do you define success? And that put me on the road towards continuing to work with military spouses and veterans.
That makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And she also, I led her outreach around veteran suicide prevention. She was the ambassador for Sister Cities International. She was the representative of the president for Special Olympics as well. She really talked a lot about beekeeping. That was actually something that was very personal to her. She started a beehive colony at the vice president's residence. And it actually is like something that we had a ton of press around. Urban beekeeping. Yeah, urban beekeeping. And so it was kind of a fun thing to learn about, and that kind of, again, a universal subject that anyone, regardless of public politics, can care about, because bees are endangered in this country. So yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So many cool themes in there, though. The first one was, if you hadn't asked that question to that guy,
right,
you would have never gotten that opportunity.
Yep.
Or
would he have thought
probably not gotten that opportunity.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if he would have thought of me. I just, again, it's not that he it was like, you just have to kind of plant it, like, hey, this would be great. And it wasn't, I didn't even go into that conversation being like, I'm going to talk to Johnny about a job like this. It was something I had been thinking about and always wanted, and saw my opportunity and went for it. And then it led to being the chief of staff.
Yeah,
that's
well,
awesome.
That's that whole "you miss 100% of the shots you don't take" mentality,
right.
And I've been telling my kids, and I try to emulate this as much as I can. Although, in my current situation, it's not as applicable because I'm sort of comfortable where I'm at now. I've done that stuff. I've climbed the ladder. I've searched out the new thing. I've started the thing from scratch, and I'm kind of good where I'm at, because it affords me a lot of freedom to do other things that I'm interested in learning how to do, things that are not associated with my career necessarily. But the thing that I've been trying to teach my young boys and the young men and women that I get to mentor is, ask the question, man, because the worst they're going to say is no or fuck off. And either way, you're exactly where you are right now. It's like you didn't lose anything. And that person's not going to have any animosity towards you for asking the question. And it's not like if that opportunity hadn't been there, your boss would have shunned you for some reason. It's like, the answer's no. Now, where do you want to go get lunch?
Yeah.
It's like, it's in, it's out. But the benefits far outweigh the risk in that case. Just, grab your sack and ask the question, man.
Well, I think, yeah, that's really important too, because I think, especially when you're younger, it may be uncomfortable to share your interests or what your goals may be, like with a manager or somebody that's above you. And if you don't have somebody above you who's asking those questions, and kind of checking in with you, because maybe they're just not that kind of leader, I think it's important to verbalize those things instead of making assumptions that, well, if I just do X, Y, and Z, then that means I'll get afforded an opportunity to go to that next position. That may not be the case. They may not even be considering something because they don't know you're interested in it. So it's always important to, I think, have the courage to be able to put voice to those things that you have, those interests that you have with people above you, so that they know that you're engaged. And I think too, it shows a certain level of, hey, I'm engaged and I'm excited and I want to continue to move forward. So,
yeah, I think also that number one, no one's gonna read your mind, even though they think they can, and don't fall into that trap.
No.
Right? They don't know what you're thinking. Everyone's very busy, have a lot going on. Number two, and this has been great advice if I've ever looked for a job over the years, is you have the people that you meet with. You ask, do you know of anything? What do you like? This is what I'm thinking for a career. If they don't know anything, you used to kind of say, well, can I ask you again in a month, 6 weeks from now? Like, do you mind if I continue checking in with you? And then if they say yes, then check in with them every 4 to 6 weeks or however long it is. And because maybe they don't know anything right then, but the next time you ask them, they might say, oh, you know what? Someone just asked me something. I didn't think about you, but this is perfect. I'm going to send your name over. And again, you're just reminding them of who you are and what you have to offer if they have been willing to help you.
Yeah.
And then number three, at the end of the day, when somebody is willing to help you and you're successful, that makes them feel good, and also it makes them look good. And no one, as a mentor, Rusky said this, it feels great to mentor someone. It makes me feel good, but ultimately I hope I'm actually helping them, because I want them to be able to go forward and say, like, oh my God, my mentor was amazing. I wouldn't be here without them. And I'm going to do this for somebody else moving forward. So, I think that, again, take people up who are willing on their offer to help you, and then be very strategic about it.
Yeah, I've said that a lot. I've said, I say over and over that there's no better feeling than knowing that you made a difference in somebody's life. And you bring it up in an interesting way there, because I guess I never thought about it. It does sound like it's all about me when I say that, but take it from maybe a different point of view and look at it like this. If you're looking for a way to find purpose, if you're looking for a way to connect, if you're looking for a way to give back, maybe you're like you, man, maybe you're the beneficiary of somebody else's goodwill at some point, or somebody else putting you in a position to succeed. If you're that person out there that's listening to this, then these are great opportunities for you to try that. A place like Hiring Heroes or ACP, or there's a bunch of them out there, a bunch of these mentoring, big brothers and sisters, Boy Scouts, who you name it, where you can get involved and you can really help somebody else out. And so I see your point, where it does seem a little like, when I say that, it sounds like it's all about me, like, oh, look at how good I feel because I did something, but it's not necessarily the way I mean it. Maybe I should change my phrasing on that a little bit, the way that I say that.
No, I mean, I think you shouldn't. And I feel like I'm kind of butchering it the way with my delivery, but I mean, really, ultimately, in your professional life, right? People help those that they know aren't going to embarrass them. And if you do a favor for someone or give someone a leg up who makes you look bad, like, you're not gonna, how many times do you make that mistake? Right? Not many, because at the end of the day, like,
valid.
This is our livelihood, right? And so when you show someone your worth, and like, this is gonna be, you're going to do me a favor, but also, like, you're going to be rewarded for it as well.
Yeah.
And
I'm not going to embarrass you for doing this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all good.
No, that's good. Cass, what else you got, man?
That's all I got, brother. It's great to have you on, Jana. Thank you so much for coming on, the Honorable Jana Toner. Thank you
The
for
honorable.
coming on the Be One Change One podcast and sharing your story with us. I think it's really powerful, Jana. And I think, like Roscoe was saying, just what you've done in your life hits on so many of the themes that we try to express and convey. And yeah, I think your story is very powerful. And so I really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. I mean, it was so different from the last one we recorded too. I think this one was great. I think it's better. I'll say that because I don't actually remember everything we talked about the last time.
Yeah.
But yeah, and they resiliency, pick yourself back up. And tomorrow's always a new day, and you never know what's going to be ahead. So I really look forward to the feedback from this. And reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn, and love to hear your stories from this.
Yeah. Well, I got to say that I've been sort of paying attention to the conversation, but I've been hyper paranoid about these little orange dots and making sure that they're all still there. So I think I've been checking them about every 10 seconds. And it looks like everybody's doing good. Cass, yours has a little bit to upload yet, but we'll talk about that when we clear Jana off. So Jana, this is a question that we've asked people before. And we haven't gotten a definitive answer on this, and we'll end it on a little bit of a lighter note. But I have to know, if you have to eat one food for the rest of your life, what is it?
Oh man,
no pressure.
Yeah, I mean, probably like a cheeseburger.
Right on.
Okay. Cass said tacos.
It's tacos.
And I don't accept tacos as a valid answer, because a taco is a combination of a lot of foods.
Fish tacos.
It's a salad. It's a salad on a shell, man.
It's a brilliant answer.
Mine was chicken, because you can do with chicken as many things as Bubba Gump did with shrimp.
Yeah.
But cheeseburgers. Okay. All right.
Cheeseburger. Yeah.
Hold up. Are you a Carl's Jr. kind of person, or are you a Hardee's kind of person?
No, I don't. I live in the big city, and I don't even know where the closest Carl's Jr. or Hardee's are, or even like which one we have on the East Coast, which was horrible. So, I had Shake Shack delivered on Saturday via Uber Eats, which was amazing.
Right on.
It's kind of, which is going to be the benefit living in the city, because we don't really have drive-throughs. So,
yeah, I live out in the desert. I can't get DoorDash out here, so we're eating out of the freezer tonight, babe. Do they in DC? Is there like Whataburgers, and what's the one in California that everybody fucking goes nuts for?
Oh my gosh,
In-N-Out Burger. Yeah,
we don't have In-N-Out in DC. No, we have Shake Shack. We have McDonald's.
Oh well, barf. That's that's
horrible.
That's like Sam's Choice Cola. Yeah. All right. Well, Jana, really appreciate your time. Good story. I feel like we scratched the surface a little bit. We'll entertain the idea for sure of getting a little bit deeper on things after some of your personal life kind of settles out. I'm anxious to keep in touch with you too, and learn how that stuff pans out. I'm genuinely interested in that. Cass is a poli-sci guy. I'm more of a hobbyist, but I'm enjoying watching the show right now. Just the spectacle of things from a fan of politics, I guess. I'm enjoying watching the show right now, and how people are on both sides. Their reactions, their how they're maneuvering their chess pieces, so to speak. So I'd be interested to get your take on some of that stuff at another time.
Yeah, there's a whole nother conversation. It's early. It hasn't even been 2 months.
That's right. Yeah, let's give it a year. And then we'll reconvene, and we'll debrief, and we'll see what comes out.
It's a great plan.
Awesome. Thanks for coming.
See you at the reunion this summer, right?
What's that now?
I hope to see you at the high school reunion this summer.
Oh, are you guys going to come?
I'll come. Yeah, I'm committed.
Perfect. Yes, Katie and I are definitely committed to that. In fact, I was. We were just talking about that last night, talking about kind of our late spring and early summer plans and how that's all going to shake out. And I emailed one of the guys that's going to be there. One of the guys that's kind of, I'm not going to name drop him, but you probably know who I'm talking about. we're going to try to get together and play some guitars on the back porch. And so that's going to be a good time. Looking forward to that. Yeah. Good. Well, we'll see you out there. Thanks for coming, and we'll see you next time.
Sounds great.
Hi, Jana.
All right. Thanks. Take care. Good to see you.
All right. Be
Bye-bye.
the one.
Be the change.
Thanks for flying with the Be One Change One podcast. If you got something out of this show, then be the one and share it in your circles of influence.
You can be our wingman through our website at www.be1change1.com. That's B and the number 1, change and the number 1.com.
We invite you to be the one and join our fighter squadron on social media at Be1Change1 on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can follow us at Paul Roscoe White on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, as well as Roscoe's website, www.paulroscoewhite.com.
You can email us from the website, and please leave comments, share, and ask questions, or leave ideas of things you would like to discuss on future podcasts. Most importantly, be the one that helps us win the algorithm by leaving a review on whatever platform you're listening on.
Thanks for joining. Until next time, be the one.